Good morning, everyone. It's a nice, chilly morning at the golf course, and I thought I would just hey, thanks for the time that you've watched my videos. I haven't done a video in a while. I just started back. The last video I did, it got quite a few views, and I was pleased with that, and I appreciate everybody watching my video. What I'm trying to do is provide people with information that's sometimes deleted or not discussed in the mainstream, but I wanted to kind of give people information about this most recent episode of Trump blowing up boats off the coast of Venezuela and the consequences and impact it could have on. Trump says he's blowing up boats to protect Americans from cocaine and gang violence. This strikes the strikes are hitting tiny vessels, often with no public proof of drugs on board. The people on the ground say some of those killed were just fishermen, workers trying to get to shore. Under international law, drug trafficking is a criminal offense, and it should not be a death sentence carried out by missiles. This is really unfortunate that this is happening to this country. And I have a few thoughts on why I believe that this is just a subterfuge for the Trump administration wanting to take over the oil resources of Venezuela. Legal experts and human rights groups are already warning that these are extrajudicial killings that violates both the maritime law and basic human rights. You don't get to skip due process and blow up a boat based on an accusation. And this is a hypocrisy of unbelievable proportion. The same U.S. system that is killing alleged smugglers on the waters has convinced a former Honduran president for helping send tons of cocaine into the noses of Americans, unquote. And yet Trump has entertained favorable treatment for him. And for Trump to pardon this is just unbelievable. How could you be concerned about the drug addiction in the U.S. and the person who admitted that he sent 400 tons of drugs into the U.S., that you would pardon him, and yet you're blowing up boats off the Venezuelan coast that has maybe 10 people at the most on it, and we know that they're not going to be bringing those boats from Venezuela all the way into the U.S. because we have the Coast Guard to protect our coast, and there's no way they could carry 400 tons of anything on those small boats. So the question is, what is the real incentive for these actions? What is really going on? And I'm hoping to share the information that I have with you in a meaningful way. So what I'd like to do is briefly discuss a book that I read a long time ago. It was called The Confessions of an Economic Hitman. And basically, what that book outlined is what a country does when the leader of a particular country where they want their resources, how they go about getting those resources. Number one, they send in what they call the jackal, a person to go in and assassinate that leader, like they did in many countries in South America and in Africa. If they don't take out the leader through the jackal, the next thing they do is find the opposition to that leader, and they foment and finance opposition actions against that leader. If that doesn't work, the last is to create a narrative that makes people believe that that person is a threat to our country. A prime example, Iraq. Remember when Valerie Plame and I'm trying to remember her husband, who worked for the government, went to verify whether there was yellow cake uranium going to Iraq, being exported to Iraq from Niger. Well, that was checked, and there was no yellow cake uranium coming to Iraq to create nuclear bomb. And with that false narrative, the U.S. went in to Iraq, toppled Saddam Hussein, and installed the oil giants that would benefit, at that time, Vice President Cheney and George Bush II. So it's a typical way that countries justify going into another country to take over their natural resources. So let's look at where this is happening. Around Venezuela, which has some of the largest proven oil reserves on the planet, larger than Saudi Arabia. And what's happening is that Venezuela is also involved with BRICS, which is a conglomeration of countries that are trying to use a currency that's other than the U.S. petrodollar. And what the U.S. is trying to do is invade Venezuela, take over their oil reserve, and make sure that China and India, who has a great daily consumption of oil, that they would have to go to the open market, which then will push up oil prices instead of getting the discounted oil from Venezuela. So one of the issues is that the U.S. has Chevron was exporting oil, I think it was about 400,000 barrels a day from Venezuela to China and India. The U.S. has now restricted Chevron from exporting any oil from Venezuela. So the alternative is that if China and India are unable to get oil from Venezuela, they're going to have to go on the open market, which, as I said before, will increase the prices of oil. Right now, I think it's at $85 a barrel, but it will be well over $120 a barrel if India and China has to go to the open market. In addition, the U.S. has threatened to, and I think they might have it in place now, any countries that imports Venezuelan oil will have an automatic 25% tariff. So in addition to the current tariffs that India and China has importing into the U.S., it will now go up another 25%. So the question is whether India and China are going to do something to help back Venezuela, which is where they get their oil from, or they're going to go on the open market, which, as I said, can impact oil prices that are now in the U.S. about $3 a gallon for processed crude, can go up to $5 or even higher. So this is a very ominous situation for India, for China, and eventually the U.S., because we will also be impacted by this. So in conclusion, I'd like to say I'm trying to inform you of the truth of what's really happening in Venezuela and the fact that the U.S. is violating international laws, human rights laws, by killing innocent people to distract people from what the ultimate intent is, which is regime change in Venezuela. This is a fact. This is what's happening. And I want all of you to be aware of it. So if you like what I'm saying, please let your friends know or send it to them, subscribe, and I will keep you all informed. We'll have another nice discussion at the golf course again. So at this time, I'm going to sign off and we'll be talking later. Bye.